start with an answer to the question, what is consciousness, or what is conscious? And I've come to the conclusion that consciousness is awareness with a purpose. And if we are living, anything that's in this three-dimensional material world is conscious, and it has awareness, and it has a purpose. And the purpose, basically, of everything is to maintain internal stability and external equilibrium. If you can't maintain internal stability and external equilibrium, then you will cease to exist. And this applies to atoms, cells, human beings, nations, organizations, no matter what. Consciousness is awareness with a purpose. The purpose is always to maintain internal stability and external equilibrium. And right now, at this moment in time, we have a lot of instability in the world. But this isn't the first time we've had this instability, because it's been going on for many years. In fact, when Homo sapiens first appeared 200,000 years ago, actually, there was a lot of stability, and it went on for nearly 185,000 years, and it was about 15 or maybe 10,000 years ago that the first wave of instability came along as people who lived in what I call clan awareness started settling down, and we moved into tribe awareness, and this instability created a new worldview, tribe awareness. And then something new happened around 3 or 4, 5,000 years ago, which had to do with the climate change, actually, and we shifted into, we got into more instability, and a new worldview emerged, and that was what I call state awareness. So we moved from clan awareness to tribe awareness to state awareness. And then around 2,000 years, 1,500 years ago, another stabilizing influence came, and we could no longer live in state awareness. It was too chaotic, and we moved into what I call nation awareness, and the cosmology in that awareness was monotheistic religions. Around 1600, we moved into a new awareness as we began to explore the world, and that became wealth awareness. And then more recently, we moved from around the last 100 to 200 years, we moved into people awareness. Now, each stage in that development, there was instability, which created a new worldview. Well, right now, we're in the midst of the biggest instability in the world. We've got climate crisis, and suddenly out of the left field comes COVID-19, and we're ready for the next worldview, which is humanity awareness. And that's what I'm going to talk about, the Humanity Awareness Initiative. It is the next worldview that is going to appear on the planet. And you can find out all about it at that website, which is there. It's really the Barrett Academy website, but that's a shortened version of it. So are there nations living at humanity awareness? No, they're not. I've been measuring the consciousness of nations now for since 2014, 16, 18, 2019, and there are only about 7 or 8 nations living at people awareness, the one below humanity awareness. And these are, guess what, the Nordic nations, plus Switzerland and New Zealand, and Canada keeps popping up then and dropping down again, and then there are about 9 nations that actually are in the next level down, which is wealth awareness, which is mostly the northern nations of Europe, including as well as Australia. And then below that come other host of nations. Now, I've been measuring the consciousness of these nations now, as I said, for quite some time, and we see that the consciousness of USA has been going down gradually and gradually. The top 5 or 6 nations are pretty much always the same. Who are they? They are the Nordic nations, plus New Zealand and Switzerland. And so I asked myself 3 years ago, what would it take to move from people awareness of these Nordic nations into humanity awareness? And I pulled together a group of people in Oxford, 12 people, to talk about that. 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I did the same thing again. Instead of having 12 people, this time I had 28 people. And that was the birth of the Humanity Awareness Initiative. Now, what is this initiative about? It's about something that's already took place in the Nordic nations over 150 years ago. In 1850, the Nordic nations realized that the Industrial Revolution was coming, and the people would be moving from the towns and villages into the cities, and they put together an education program for young adults to help them to make that shift. Now, they called that Bildung, and you can read about it in the Nordic Secret, the book. Now, what was this Bildung? It's what I call individuation. What Carl Jung called individuation is the fourth stage of development. Now, what is the Humanity Awareness Initiative about? Is to repeat that Bildung experience in every nation in all over the world, to teach young people how to become conscious, because individuation is all about becoming conscious. And what does that mean? It means three things. One, you become aware of the impact of your actions and behaviors on other people. Two, you become aware of your thoughts, the impact of your thoughts and beliefs on your physical and mental health. And thirdly, and this is the most important point, you care about the impact that your actions have on other people and the planet, and you care about the impact your thoughts and beliefs have on your physical and mental health. That is called becoming conscious. Now, only a small percentage of people on the planet are actually conscious because they live in conditions which don't allow them to be conscious. They live in survival, safety, security, those stages of development, those levels of consciousness. So what did the Nordic nations do? They created the possibility for people to have those needs met through what was called a welfare state. I'm not talking about communism. I'm talking about a state that cares about people, cares about everyone. And so when your needs got cared for, those survival, safety, and security needs, those first three levels of Maslow's hierarchy, you are free to individuate. And that's what happened in those nations. And so what I'm attempting to do through the Humanity Awareness Initiative is to create the curriculum that are required to support the individuation of young people, young adults all over the world, to make that freely available, to provide trainers to train people who work in not-for-profits and people who are working with young people, to provide training for those trainers so they can take these curriculum all over the world and on a nation-by-nation basis. So in the Humanity Awareness Initiative, we are actually creating country teams. And in those country teams, they are collecting and bringing together people who are working with young people and saying, here is a new vision for the world. You can see it on this website. Here is a new vision. If you can sign up for that, then we can provide you with the curriculum that will help implement that vision. And we'll provide you with trainers to train your people to implement that vision. And through Future Capital, we'll provide you with income, well, money. We'll channel money into these organizations so that they can make that difference in the world. So I think my 10 minutes is probably up, and I'm going to stop right there.
Perfect timing, Richard. Let's hope right on target. Well done. I know 10 minutes is very difficult with a lifetime worth of work. In the Q&A, there will be ways to contact Richard. But let me hand it over to Patty so we can get right into questions.
I call Patty Spirit in the Sky, not Voice in the Sky. There was that wonderful song that came out many years ago, Spirit in the Sky. So come on, Patty, be our spirit in the sky.
Hello, Patty. Okay, I think maybe Heather might have to jump in for Patty. I'm not sure what's going on. Heather, why don't you jump in for Patty?
Absolutely, I would be more than happy to step in. Those are some big shoes, but I'll do my best to see what I can do. So, Richard, can you some of the questions that have come in really quick? Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey and why really your passion around humanity awareness kind of was born?
Gosh, It's my sole inspiration. I started my life as a transportation engineer. I was working at the World Bank. I was 45 years old, and I suddenly realized I was totally bored with my career. And I realized that I'd misheard my soul saying when I was 17, transportation engineer. I thought that's what it said, but it said transformation engineer. And so then I shifted completely. I left the World Bank and started the Barrett Value Center to measure values, mapping it to the levels of consciousness. And I've just moved on and on from there. Now I'm deep into the understanding of ego-soul dynamics, how you become conscious as an individual, how do you become a soul having that human experience. We don't have souls, we are souls, and that's what I've learned. And living from that place allows us to super create and to be able to become the servant of what wants to come through us. And I think that's everybody's desire, to be the servant of their soul. And because that's how you find joy and fulfillment in your life. And that's my journey, basically, into soul consciousness.
Richard, thank you so much. That is just so beautiful. Can you give, and beautiful journey, Joe, I totally agree. I'm kind of looking at the chat as well, Richard. And for all of you, Richard's follow-up information, for more information, is located in the chat. But Richard, for individuals that are in the process of really beginning to listen and hear their song's voice, and then perhaps sometimes things get loud on the other side, on their current world, with the voices and the things that are going on. Do you have any advice for individuals, again, that are really finding their soul's vibration, their soul's journey, what they're doing here and why they're here? Do you have any advice to give those individuals as they really begin to integrate in their lives where they are right now?
So the key to living in soul consciousness is to let go of your fears. Subconscious fears, we all have subconscious fears from our childhood. I've never met anybody, including Lawrence, who doesn't have some subconscious fear. I say that because he's my buddy and we love to punch each other a little bit, you know. Anyhow, we all have, I had it, but I spent a lifetime working on those subconscious fears. As you release your fear, the energy of love that emanates from the soul fills your being. Fear disappears, love comes in. And then comes the next important point, letting go of fear, trusting the soul. That's the hardest. Handing your life over, it seems like, but actually your life was always the life of the soul. It was never anybody else's life. It wasn't your life, it was the life of your soul. And so surrendering to the soul is like so fundamental to becoming who you can become. And the soul is really only interested in three things. One, self-expression, fully expressing who you are, connecting, because the soul hates separation, and contributing. And that is what's been going on during this crisis right now. I pulled together a group of people the other day who've been at my workshops, and I said, what's happening to you in lockdown? And that's what they said. We are connecting, we are contributing, and some of them were actually leaving their jobs and beginning to find work which was the true eminence of their soul. So that's really what we all have to do. Let go of fear, trust your soul, get on with the job.
Fantastic, Richard. You make it sound so beautifully easy and amazing. And for all of you, I love that joke when you said subconscious fears. I have seen and had the joy of seeing you and Lawrence play like children. So for all the audience, they've had to go in their timeout in their corners as well. But we have a lot of fun here. So when we talk about subconscious fears, Richard, so many of us are here, future capital is really the driving force, and one of the driving forces that has driven us so beautifully together. Can you talk about some of those sub fears or those deep rooted fears surrounding money?
Well, I wish I could, because I've never had those fears, but then I've never had any money either. So. But firstly, there are three categories of fear that come up for everybody. Do I have enough? Which goes right back to that particular question. Am I loved enough? Which is the relationship question. The first one's the survival question. Do I have enough? Am I loved enough? And then the third question is, am I enough? That's the self-esteem question. And basically, all our fears come from the ego's attachment to beliefs that we don't have enough, we're not loved enough, and we are not enough. And so those are the types of fears that we all have. And releasing those fears, if you're human, you'll have some of those fears. That's just part of being human. But learning to release and master those fears is important. Now, I say master because all of these fears we learn when we're young, and our mind, our brain is growing and developing, and all our experiences during the first 20 years of our lives are based on emergent learning, and those fears become hardwired. And so sometimes those fears are so hardwired that the best thing you can do is master them. I mean, I have subconscious fears that I've learned to master. It means, like, when I get triggered, I used to spend 2 days in upset. Since I mastered those fears, I can get out of that in 5 minutes. And that's the key. So either you release your fears or you master your fears, but you become conscious of how your thoughts and beliefs are impacting your physical and mental health. That's part of becoming conscious.
Well, Richard, that is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. And one last question, and we have about 2 minutes left, so we'll kind of do a lightning round here, Richard. Can you talk about, I know that one of the working groups that is diving into handling these, kind of stepping into ourselves. Could you give maybe a brief overview of that working group? I know that we're going to be presenting in a future time, but perhaps giving just a brief overview. And if you need something a word to spark your memory, let me know, because I have it right in the tip of my tongue for you.
Well, anything from you, Heather, will be worth hearing. So why don't you spit it out?
I will just leave the word fellowship.
Fine. That's exactly what I thought you were going to say. So, the key to the key to future capital is capital and consciousness. And so becoming consciousness is absolutely fundamental to how we use capital in the future. So the fellowship program that we're beginning to put together starts with the very idea, that we're moving into a new worldview which cares not just about people, but where we have a transnational identity. We care about humanity, point one. Point two, we look at ourselves and say, how do I lead myself? Because I can't lead myself, if I can't master my fears, if I can't be fully who I am, if I can't be authentic, how can I lead a team? And if I can't lead a team, how can I lead an organization? And so it all begins with this journey to authenticity. And that, I think, is the key to bringing more and more people into the Future Capital Initiative.